evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for August 18th, 2009. Could you please stand for the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'd like to start with an introduction of the board members, starting with Mr. Recook,
Good evening, Walt Recook.
Scott Kilgore.
Gary Willis.
Sandy Jones,
Todd Chernick.
Marcia Parsons.
John McRae.
Next item on our agenda is approval of the June meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, we still have no official transcription, so
Okay. All right. Our first primary variance for consideration this evening is V09 dash, whoops, excuse me. I've had a crazy day. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determinations. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by four considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. A sign variance may be approved under the following conditions: where existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road. First primary variance for consideration is V09-009 14250 Creek Club Drive, Crooked Creek entrance wall. Staff could please present.
staff was actually going to request a deferral of this petition until the next meeting. There was a problem with the newspaper advertisement. Turns out that not only is we didn't need a variance for the column heights, but they need one for the portion of the fence and the wall also. That wording was left out from the advertisement.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to defer V09-009 till our September Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Second.
Discussion? None heard. I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor of deferral, please raise your hand. All those opposed, let the record show that the motion was approved unanimously. Next primary variance is V09-010 5200 Windward Parkway, Walmart. Staff could please present.
Petition V09-010. Address is 5200 Windward Parkway. This is the Walmart store. The petitions are as follows. Number one, to increase the maximum number of wall signs from 2 to 4. And part 2, to increase the maximum allowed square footage of signage from 200 square feet to 460.28 square feet. Background. The site, Walmart store number 2941, is located in a commercial retail development consisting of 22.9 acres at 5200 Windward Parkway. It is zoned MIX, or mixed use, per Z99087. The property is located in the State Route 9 Overlay District. The applicant, Susie Riddell, on behalf of Walmart, proposes to change the exterior signage as part of the store remodel. The remodel of this store is part of a nationwide rebranding effort. In December of 2000, Walmart received a variance to increase the maximum allowed square footage of wall signage. This number is V00235. The approval of the petition was conditioned to 4 signs at the following dimensions. Number 1, 189 square feet. Number 2, 39.7 square feet. 3, 30.45 square feet. And 4, 80.85 square feet. Walmart is now proposing to replace the 4 existing signs on the front elevation with 4 new signs. The variance petition requests an increase of the maximum number of wall signs from 2 to 4. Article 33, Section 25.F2.A states, businesses may have no more than 2 wall signs. The applicant states that the remodel of the store will restructure the interior layout of merchandise as well as the location of the pharmacy. She states the additional signage that Walmart is asking for would be located over the vestibule doors and would serve as a wayfinding tool for the shopping public. The 2 additional signs would be Market and Pharmacy and Home and Living. Furthermore, the existing Walmart sign will be replaced with a new Walmart Spark sign, and the Tire and Lube sign will be replaced with an outdoor living sign. In the process, the applicant also proposes to increase the maximum allowed square footage of signage from 200 square feet to 460.28 square feet to accommodate this new signage. Article 33, Section 26(1)J states, wall signs shall not exceed 100 square feet or 5% of the applicable wall area, whichever is less. The length of the sign shall not exceed 10 times the height of the sign. The current signage is a total of 460.28 square feet. Please see the table below for comparison of existing versus proposed signage. And just to sum up the table, the allowed square footage per the 2000 variance was 340. The existing square footage as installed was 322.48. The square footage as proposed today is 460.28, and that gives us a addition of 137.8 square feet. Additional department comments. The staff held a focus meeting on August 3rd, 2009, at which the following comments were provided. Building plan review, site plan review, the city arborist, and DOT stormwater all had no issues with this petition. Standards for consideration. The applicant has indicated a justification for variance based on the following standard. Where existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size and square footage and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road. The applicant states that the signage on the store is difficult to view due to the existing trees and the location of the building in relation to Windward Parkway. In addition, there are several other retail commercial buildings located in front of the Walmart building. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions. Staff has no conditions for this petition at this time. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Mr. Recook?
Yes, Angela, what are the public streets on this property?
State Route 9 and Windward Parkway are the frontages.
So none of these internal streets are really considered public roads?
No, they're all private drives.
Okay. That's all.
Any other questions at this time?
Angela, I have a question. Just to summarize this last paragraph, just so make sure I'm getting it right. Article 33, Section 26.1
J states wall sign shall not exceed 100 square feet. Is that the total signage package or per sign?
Per sign.
Okay, and I'm assuming Fulton County and Milton agree on the 200 square feet total? It's never explicitly said that Milton's,
Yeah, it doesn't explicitly say that the total number of square footage is 200 square feet, and that was a change from the Fulton County ordinance. That's Milton's.
and Fulton County's was what?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Rico?
Yes, Angela. If this wasn't a Walmart, if this was 4 separate businesses or 5 separate businesses, how many signs would they be allowed for each of those businesses?
2.
So in other words, if this was broken up into 5 businesses, there would be 10 possible signs potentially.
Yes.
And so in some ways, there's some, I'm not going to say discrimination, but because it's a big building, it hurts itself to some degree for the amount of signs based on our ordinance. So I know Target, we had an issue with Target where they came in and they asked for signs and such. So I just want to make sure I understand how our ordinance relates to a big box. Thank you.
Are you looking for an answer from staff, or was that
She was
just?
shaking her head yes, and she told me.
Well, yeah, the ordinance does not differentiate in the size of the square footage of the stores,
Right.
Big box or whatever.
Angela, do they have 4 signs now as per the variance from 2000?
Technically, yes. I kind of count it. If you just glance at it, I would just kind of count that tire and lube sign as one, but I believe they're counting those as 2 separate.
Any other questions at this time for staff? Yeah.
Angela, do we have any pictures from the staff of what those signs look like now from the street?
You should have some in your
I
packet.
see some pictures that are close up, but none from the street.
Hold on. Let me see.
Did you? Okay, good. I just heard one of the board members has pictures, so that's great.
I don't think I printed out on my
Do you have
page.
those? He's got it.
I don't have any more with me.
I have a question for staff as well.
Okay. Go ahead.
Angela, I just want to be clear on the original variance that was allowed in 2000. I understand it's a total of 340 square feet. Was there any restriction on the individual sign size? I know they gave them 2 additional signs, so they currently have 4 signs and 340 square feet total, if I heard you correctly. Was there any restriction on the individual signs, or was it basically 100 square feet each, or was it just as long as they didn't go over the total of 400?
Yes, the variance was actually written to say you are allowed to have 4 signs. Sign number 1 is 189, sign number 2, and blah, blah, as
Okay,
it's written out there.
So the sizes given, they're currently
They were
restricted to
specific
that.
about the sizes, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thank you.
Anything else? Is the applicant?
I actually have one more question for staff, and this is a question that I emailed you earlier. As it relates to this 2000 variance and the variance we're hearing today, can you confirm my understanding that if we were to deny this variance, that Walmart would then be subject to the 2000 variance? Is that
Right,
correct?
they can install signage up to the allowed square footages per that 2000 variance.
Okay. And then my second question is, as a board, we have the latitude to determine anywhere between 2 and 4 signs, and anywhere between 200 square foot to the requested 460 square foot.
The board can approve less than what was requested.
Okay, thank you.
I had one other question. Do we have the square footages? I know that the variance request is asking for a total square footage. Do we know the square footages of the individual signs so that we could compare those to the original?
Are they in that
They are in
table?
the table?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Good. I will do more homework here. Yep, got them. Thank you.
Mr. Recook?
Angela, you bring up one other interesting question. So you're saying that they could we could approve less than what they're requiring, but is it also an ability for the applicant to withdraw his application before a vote is taken if they feel that they may not get what they want?
No, a denial won't hurt them. That variance would still stand.
So in other words, if we did deny less than 4, then I guess what I'm trying to understand.
It would revert back to the 2,000 variance. If we denied this variance today, it would revert back to 2,000, which would allow them 4 signs, maximum 340 square feet.
But I heard her say that we could go down to 2 signs, and that's not what I'm hearing now. That it'd still be 4 signs.
Only if we deny. If we approve with a smaller number, then they can,
Right.
they have to live with what we approve.
Do we need clarification from staff?
Yeah, that's true.
To the extent, and it appears that some signage is in place, is that my understanding?
Yes.
The variance, if you reduced the number of signs pursuant to this variance, they would have a vested right, I believe from what I understand, a vested right to the signs that they have constructed in compliance with the previous variance.
Angela, can you show Paul the table on page 4? You got it? And just, right, and just for clarification, Paul, based on this regard, if the board does deny, by the previous variance that they received approval, they will be allowed 4 signs with a maximum square footage of 340.
Without seeing the actual language of the variance and proposal and motion and everything, I can't say for sure. That is an interesting question, is whether there were specifics that may have been tied to specific plans submitted. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But potentially it could be a single maximum number for
Okay.
all signs, or it could have been tied to each signs.
Okay.
But it would be subject to whatever the variance request and the board, the county's motion was at the time.
Okay, Nancy, I think you stated that there was actually in the variance, there was 4 discrete
They have 4 specific
sign
square
1, sign 2,
footages.
sign 3, sign 4,
And,
and
he has-
corresponding areas. Okay.
So, Paul, in your opinion, is Part 1 of their variance request necessary? 'Cause what I'm hearing is that even if we were denied, they would revert back to 4 signs, not 2.
Yeah, I don't see where they're required to obtain another variance to increase the number of signs, in that they have a variance in place for 4 signs.
I took it to mean that a variance request always has to be against the ordinance, not against previous allowances. But I don't know. I assumed that when I read it that that's why she had worded it that way. But that's a good question.
All right, let's hear from the applicant at this time.
Well, we'd like to get the attorney to answer
Oh,
this
okay.
question.
Go ahead, as he's coming up. Go ahead, Paul.
What was the specific?
Well, I guess the specific question is, is the reason the variance is worded the way it is, where it's in contrast with the ordinance as opposed to in contrast with what they currently have been allowed? Is that because whenever we write variances, they always have to be against the ordinance? Is that just?
Well, I can't speak to why the particular ordinance was submitted. I believe that they have from what I have seen, they have a right to 4 signs, so they would not need an approval for 4 signs. If we went in and found out that they had been doing something that hadn't been granted a variance, and we would say, hey, you need to clean this up by getting the additional variance. But I think it appears they've already done that previously, so there's no harm in granting it.
It's more of a procedural question, I think.
Why don't we just leave it as written?
Well, I don't think we can change it.
Yes, please go.
Hi, my name is Chris Sullivan. I'm with PB2 Architecture and Engineering. We're the architect of record for the project. As staff has mentioned, Walmart is currently going through a national rebranding campaign, and part of that is typically Walmart stores have upwards of 11 to 13 signs on the front of the stores. In response to communities such as yours, Walmart has decided that it's a little excessive, and they've scaled back their sign package to what you're seeing here. The Walmart sign with the new Spark logo. Again, they're trying to go for a a brand image that, people like with Target, there's the Target symbol. Starbucks has their logo. And so that's part of the effort here is Walmart's trying to get that, brand image. And so with that, they're reducing the number of signs. The font has been changed, and stuff like that. So this evening, so we're asking for relief from the square footage. Again, we do have 4 signs on the building now, and we're asking for 4 more, the 4 signs, but they're different. Right now, you have the Walmart Supercenter sign badge, and that's being replaced with the Walmart and the Spark. Right now, also, we're asking for the outdoor living sign, which will be located over the garden center, and the 2 signs that do not exist on the building right now at all. Market and Pharmacy and Home and Living, which will be over the vestibules. Those are the signs that we're asking for this evening, and I haven't answered any questions.
The packet was difficult to read. The site, I think what you're depicting up here in color, it really isn't much better. Can you give me an idea of the actual height and length of the Market and Pharmacy sign?
I can give you the height. It's 2 foot.
Say that again?
2 foot. So we can go through the previous signs. The Walmart sign was 5 foot tall. The new Walmart sign will be 5'6". We're scratching the Supercenter. The tire and lube sign, which is currently located in this area of the store, is 2'6", and the Express with the arrow is also 2'6". The Home and Living sign and the Market Pharmacy sign and the Outdoor Living sign are all 2 foot tall.
And what's the length on those?
I don't have that information, sir.
23 feet. Market and Pharmacy is 23 feet. Home and Living is 17 feet 5 inches. Outdoor Living is 18 feet 1 9/16.
So I just couldn't read them.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you.
And what was the existing on the previous signs, not the Supercenter sign, but the previous tire and lube tire sign?
Yeah, it was the tire and lube, and under that was the Express with arrow, and those are both 2'6" each, and they were located in this area over here. Yes, sir.
Do you have any pictures to go with the letter that you provided us?
Unfortunately, no, I don't, sir.
And so how are you going to make your case
For
the application for this variance? Basically, the way the condition reads is that you've got to prove to us that the reason you're asking for these signs are because existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meets minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining street. So, prove it to me.
Okay. Well, driving through I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with the property in question. Coming down off of either Route 9 or Windward Parkway, they're fronted with the businesses along Windward Parkway, and as you're driving into the property, there's multiple. All the islands are either populated with at least 1 or 2 trees. At least 4 or 5 inch caliper. So they're good-sized trees. So approaching the store, you're faced with you can barely see the Walmart sign, which right now is the largest sign on the building, and it's located in the center of the building. As it is, with the vegetation, you can barely see the vestibules, and so what we're asking as a wayfinding and a public safety issue is allowing Walmart to have the signage over the vestibule doors. Again, the Walmart with this rebranding, in addition to that, they're also reconfiguring the inside of the store. Where the pharmacy is now is moving over towards the grocery, and then so components of what was over by the grocery is now moving over towards the general merchandise area, which is now considered home and living. So that's what we're looking for. Is you know, we want to help clarify for the shopping public, where would be the most optimum place to park in relationship to the vestibules in the store.
So in other words, when I look at your Walmart sign, I know that it's 5'6"
Correct.
It looks like your other signs are somewhere around 2 foot.
2 foot tall, yes, sir.
And if I can't see your existing sign from the street, which I guess is 5 foot in height, you're increasing it to 5'6" Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're increasing it by 6 inches to make it slightly taller. And then as far as your width is concerned, I don't have the quick calculation, but you may. It's a little bit longer, it looks like. But the big thing is making it 6 inches taller is the big part of the Walmart sign. That's really changing. I don't know.
And in addition to the Spark signage also.
Right. And is that Spark going to be lit up any differently? Is it going to be neons, flashing?
No, the only sign on the building that will be lit, it's internally lit, is the Walmart and the Spark, and they're LED lights. So it's a soft glow.
Now the thing that confuses me is we got all these outdoor living, home and living, market and pharmacy that are only 2 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I can't see the Walmart sign that's 5 foot tall,
Right.
how am I going to see the 2 foot tall? Or what's the purpose of those signs? Maybe that's a better question.
It's wayfinding. As you're approaching the store, driving towards the store, again, it helps you to decide whether or not I'm shopping for milk and eggs. So I need to approach the side of the store that has market and pharmacy. So it's so we don't have people parking on one side of the parking lot and walking across the parking lot to get to the grocery component of the store.
So in other words, your store is so big that somebody could get lost in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And really, those signs aren't going to be able to be seen from the street
No,
anyway,
sir, not
just
at all.
about.
No. The store as well. I mean, again, if the store is sitting almost in a bowl, so to speak. The elevations along Route 9, as you're going along Windward towards Route 9, the elevation goes up. So the store sits in a bowl.
I got two more questions.
Sure, sorry.
Also, you're showing some signage on the side or the rear of the building. And I don't see anything in our packet directing about those, but I guess those meet the minimum. Is that correct?
Those weren't included because they were deemed not to be able to be seen from the right-of-way at all. So,
Okay.
and the ordinance states that if you can't see them from the right-of-way, they're not, the ordinance does not pertain to these, so that's why the sided side, I don't think the new one, does the new one propose this? I don't think it proposes anything on the side, but the rear signage wasn't included.
Right, because there are some things in the back, and I know we approved one just recently with 3 sides signs, and that one I know you couldn't see from the back or the right-of-way.
So,
But
well,
anyway, I'm
just
sorry.
for clarification on your question, are there signs on the side of the building as well?
I don't
In this
think
proposed
they're
package?
proposing it.
Not in this. No, there's the tire lube. There are signs over the bay doors, but again, those aren't visible
Those
at all from the public right
Okay,
away.
and there's nothing proposed on the sides of the building in this new package?
No, sir.
Okay.
There's just the front signage that we're talking about.
So if I heard you correctly, the purpose of the signs, other than the Walmart sign, I realize the Walmart and the what are you calling it?
Spark.
Spark.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to call it a star or an asterisk, and I knew that wasn't right. So, but it's really the other 4 signs, or the other 3 signs, I guess. Is that right, or is it a total of, total of 4? So the purpose of these other signs is wayfinding? Is that the term you use in the business? When does wayfinding occur? Does that occur when I'm driving along Windward Parkway, or when I'm driving up Highway 9, or
Well,
does that occur after I've pulled into the shopping center?
In this case, it definitely occurs, as you pull into the property. I mean, you really driving along Windward Parkway towards Route 9. Again, there's businesses in front of the property in question, so you can't see the store really at all.
Right.
But so as you turn off Windward and off of Route 9, there's 2 entrances. That's what begins. You come along the drive aisles, and you begin to see the store.
So it's as you approach the store
Correct.
once you're on the property.
Right, and then that allows the customer to begin to determine whether or not I need to park here or drive across the parking lot and park at the other side.
Understand.
Okay.
And I guess I have one other question. I want to be sure, if this is denied, you'll still be able to put up these wayfinding signs. They're just not going to be as large as your standard signs would normally be. Is that right? Very good. Thank you.
And I I have a question. What are your plans for the Walmart sign out on Windward Parkway next to the Chick-fil-A, the lighted sign? 'Cause it doesn't have
monument
your
sign?
star on it now.
Yeah, we'll replace the face of that with, a Walmart and Spark. So it'll be, we won't touch the actual
It'll
cabinet
be exactly
itself.
the same size.
Yes, exactly.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Mr. Sullivan, one of the things that I'm just kind of challenged is your justification for the, for the variance, and you give 3 points. One is that the signage in the store is difficult to view due to 1, existing trees, 2, location of the building in relation to Windward Parkway, and 3, several other retail commercial buildings located in front of the building, the out parcels. And I don't see where granting a variance is going to, as some of my other colleagues have alluded to, will be able to alleviate that. I mean, unless, the foliage is going to be an obstruction, unless the foliage is removed. The out parcels, buildings are going to continue unless they are demolished, and the same thing. So help me here a little bit understand how this increase that you're requesting will alleviate or justifies this variance.
Sure. So the existing signage right now, there are no signs over the vestibule doors, to lead the public, to the proper, to their final destination within the store. So now we're reconfiguring the type of signage. So basically everything beforehand was, hey, we're Walmart, come shop here. Whereas now is we still have the Walmart sign to indicate what obviously what the store is. But the increase comes when we add the 2 signs over the vestibule doors.
So for me as a shopper, I am a Walmart shopper, is to help me then determine, as I pull up, do I enter this door or do I enter this door?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's my decision point, and that's the purpose,
Right.
just to reiterate, of the signage.
Correct.
So not necessarily when I'm driving in, even on the non-public roads, the internal perimeter roads,
Right.
but when I make that decision as I'm about to, as I'm approaching the building.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Well, since these are just locational signs that tell you this is where you go in for food and this is where you go in for home and gardens, why do these signs need to be larger than what the city of Milton already allows? Or what the variance allows? Because you're going to be right there. It's going to be easy
Right.
to. Why do they need to be larger? Because we're not seeing them from the street. We're already in. And there's the store, and we're going to say, okay, food here, home and garden down here.
A lot of it has to do with the scale. And if you look at the elevation, these signs, the width and the height fit nicely into that area. If you begin to reduce the size of it, it begins to look like an afterthought. So that's probably the biggest point right there.
Are these signs in production already?
I'm sorry.
Are these signs in production already?
They're stock signs.
They're stock signs.
Yeah.
So every Walmart that's being refurbished is going to have these
Yes,
signs?
ma'am. That's the idea. Again, if you go to Walmart here in Milton or Walmart in Rogers, Arkansas, there'll be there's that recognition that they're looking for.
And the rebranding being the spark and the use of the terms to.
Right.
on which-
The signage, the new color scheme,
Okay.
all that is part of this rebranding.
And just a clarification then, because I see the new color scheme, the Walmart here in question the color scheme will be changed to reflect
Yes, ma'am.
this? Okay. Staff, this does meet the Highway 9 overlay
Yes.
requirements?
We've checked.
Okay, just checking.
So just for clarification, what I'm looking at, you're on page 4 of our packet. The biggest change would be on the Walmart Spark sign. Square footage is 108 square feet. Is that because of the Spark, not the Walmart lettering?
Right. Yeah. The Spark is
It's 6
8
more
foot.
inches
Yeah. It's quite a bit
taller,
taller.
I
So
know.
yeah. The Spark is quite a bit
The biggest
taller.
part is the Spark.
Yes, ma'am. Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I follow up on that
Yeah,
point?
please.
Because I'm confused on that as well. I'm not sure if the dimensions here add up. You mentioned that the existing Walmart sign is 5 foot tall,
Yes, sir.
and the existing Walmart sign consumes 190 square feet. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So if I did a rough calculation on that, that tells me it's 5 foot by 38 feet.
Something like that. Yeah.
Can someone check me on that? 5 foot by 38 feet equals 190? Whereas you're saying the proposed sign, Walmart sign with the spark, is 5'6" tall by 37 feet.
Right.
But yet it's 100 square feet larger. It doesn't add up.
Because we also calculate the spark into that.
Yeah, the spark.
Right. Also, the calculation's based on actual footage of the sign, not the area necessarily. Is that right,
Yeah,
Angela?
that's what's been in the past.
How's that area calculated? Don't you draw a box around it?
You should draw a box around the
6 inches.
Right.
whole thing, but if the spark was included.
Right. The box would be a separate. The spark would be a separate box, and then the word Walmart would be a separate box.
Right. All right. So the spark is 8 foot tall. I'm just seeing that now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
8 feet tall for the spark. I know. I can't see. It's crazy.
Here you go.
And then the existing sign.
Hand that to you.
Do you need to look? I can.
I mean, look at this paper. It's all white, and then everything's crammed in the bottom. That's doesn't help us.
I understand, sir. Apologize for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I came up with
No, I got volts.
checked it evidently. 298.
While we're getting to the bottom of that, I have a question for you. You addressed the topography creating a hardship for you, but your standards for consideration that are in our packet reference the existing foliage or structures bringing about a hardship. So could you delve into that?
Yeah, well, I mentioned
Topography
earlier-
isn't a standard for
Right,
consideration.
and I mentioned earlier that every island, parking island within that property has at least 1 to 2 good-sized trees in it. So that the whole parking lot is populated with trees obscuring your vision of the store.
And do you know who planted those trees?
We're probably required by the city.
Okay, and have they grown in the past 9 years, to your knowledge?
I'm sure they have. Yes.
To the extent where they would obscure the signage?
I'm sorry.
To the extent that they would obscure the signage to this degree that you would need almost over 100 additional square feet, 137 additional square feet? in
Well, again,
addition to what was-
going back to what's on the store right now. Again, we have the Walmart and Supercenter sign, and then the signage for the TLE. Those signs are located up higher, and so we've changed. Again, going to the new sign package, we're looking at instead of advertising, here's Walmart, we're looking to have wayfinding for the public. So these signs again are they're tool to bring the public into the property and safely locate them where they want to go.
Yes, Ms. Recook?
Again, I guess my problem is I'm looking at this variance, and everything kind of gets directed towards trees and ability to see this sign. What I'm worried about is I had a similar project that was across the street from a project that I was building in the beautiful city of Snellville, where this developer went in and trimmed every tree in that parking lot to where they were all sticks. Now, the condition of the trees obscuring the view is great today, but it may not be great tomorrow. I'm wondering if you would have any problem in any kind of conditioning of the project where no trees would be removed or trimmed on the property to make sure that this condition of trees is a constant. And then same thing, if a tree dies or is damaged, a new 2-inch tree of the same species shall be planted within 90 days or on city request. And 3, that all trees and shrubs on the site shall be fertilized at a rate each winter as required by a registered arborist. Would you have any problem with anything like this? Because trees to me are critical, and I've seen it out there, but to me, I saw what they did in Snellville. They decimated that whole damn shopping center, and the trees are beautiful, and they didn't remove them, but they trimmed them to such a point that they might as well have just killed them.
Right.
And I think, to me, the most important thing for me to maintain in this community are the trees, and if I had some condition in there that solidified that point, I feel like I'm coming out as a positive.
I would like to add that when you say no trimming, that doesn't include like pruning to maintain the health of the trees, correct? I mean we're not. I mean I have no problem with what you're saying. Obviously, Walmart wants to be a good neighbor, and there was a considerable investment in putting those trees there to begin with, and they're healthy, they're good-looking trees, I have no problem, as long as we're allowed to, when you say no trimming, but that doesn't preclude us from, maintaining with pruning and stuff like that.
And what I would say, if I'll amend that to be something to the effect that with limited pruning due to health issues. How's that?
Sounds good.
Mr. Sullivan, I have a question for you. With approval of this variance, you would be able to move forth in with the size and the manner in which you're depicted here.
Yes, ma'am.
If this variance was denied, Walmart would still be able to move forth in their rebranding efforts and placing the signs over the vestibules, rebranding to your Spark. It would just not be at the scale and the size that you've moved forward. But it would, so both, either way, Walmart would still be able to move forward with their branding efforts.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's affirmative, yes? Okay, thank you.
Again, we would, we could make the signs smaller, but again, I think that the look of the building would detract from the character of the building. Again, putting smaller signs in those areas would, again, look like an afterthought. It just wouldn't be very attractive.
Thank you.
Could we see that signage that you have on the board a little closer? Anybody else?
Can staff hand that up?
Yeah, it's pretty small.
I'm with you. I can't see it either.
I
got 2015.
have a few large printouts if you want to see those. That would help.
Let's hear it. I just need a good visual.
Do you want it? Well, I was going to do it. That's fine. We'll use that as part of our public comment. How about we do that? We'll move to that phase.
This is actually only the nursery.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they've got the tire.
The other two of
The other
those
one's
was the nursery.
Over the nursery is what, outdoor living?
Yes.
I'm surprised they didn't put it in the middle there where there's more space.
Yeah, in between the terms.
Just comment.
So the entire building will be repainted as part of this branding effort,
Correct, sir.
making it stand out to the community in a different form than it does today.
Right. Again, the Walmart's looking for that consistency, for its image.
Do you have any idea what the square footage of the signage is of the Walmart they just built up Highway 9 past Grafton?
I have no idea, sir.
Okay.
Well, at this time, let's, the applicant has another chance for comment for us to ask some final questions. But at this time, let's move to the public comment section. As there's no public, I'm sorry, yes, you have a public comment?
I have a letter from a citizen and she'd like to have it read into the record.
Yes, please, thank you.
Which means I could add it to there. And have.
Okay.
We'll share, y'all can share.
I have some more if you need one. Are you good?
Can you read it to me? I'm kidding.
This is from Heidi Souter, 525 Sunflower Court, Milton, Georgia, concerning B09010 Walmart. Dear BZA members, I am unable to attend this evening's meeting and ask that my comments be read for the record this evening. I also appreciate your consideration of my concerns regarding this variance request. I've lived in the State Route 9 area for 10 years and have seen much growth. As a resident, I welcome the convenience of shopping close to my home. That being said, I also appreciate the fact that Milton's commercial areas are being held to higher design standards than other areas in North Fulton. As you know, Section 33 of the zoning ordinance limits businesses to 2 wall signs in all zoning categories, including commercial areas. I ask that the BZA uphold this statute of Milton's zoning code. I shop at the Windward Walmart at least once a week. I find it hard to believe that hardship can be claimed by Walmart, as the store's crowded no matter what time of day or night I've been there. I realize Walmart is in the process of giving the location a facelift. This is welcome news. However, just because other Walmart locations have similar signage as that being requested this evening is not a valid reason to grant a variance. A good example of how a retailer can maximize the signage within Milton's code would be the Target store just up the street. Target has prescribed 2 wall signs and placed its grocery and pharmacy signs inside its doors so as to be visible to the shoppers as they enter the parking lot. This is efficient and serves the same purpose as additional wall signs without accosting those that live in the area with excessive signage. I would ask that the board members uphold Article 33 and allow Walmart a maximum of 2 wall signs per Article 33.26, 1H and J below. And she lists and she quotes from the highway overlay signage information. Thank you, Heidi Souter.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Angela, do you have anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Then at this time, I'd like to use the public comment period. Mr. Kilgore has some pictures that he's taken, and that we can kind of explain. It's just where the staff photographs that we have are taken from the property just in front of the store. These appear to be taken from different public roads. Let him explain these.
This is going through the intersection of crossing Highway 9, going toward 400 on Windward Parkway, and these are out the driver's side window, so they are from across the street. I parked at the McDonald's after this and actually walked around the corner, took several pictures, so I'll just go through. And what I was really trying to get a feel for was what we've already discussed, and that's how much is increasing the signage size going to improve the readability of the signage on the front of the building. Some of these are, obviously I was trying to drive at the same time, so I was not being as safe as I should.
We didn't need to know that.
And there's what you can see of the Walmart through the Chick-fil-A. There's the existing tire and lube sign. That's looking in. I think McDonald's is on the right, Chick-fil-A is on the left. And then I pulled into McDonald's and parked, and there's our sign, by the way. I just happened to catch that on the way by. This is walking up the sidewalk. That's looking at Chick-fil-A's on the left, McDonald's is on the right. That's about the best view you have of the tire and lube sign from that entrance. And then, of course, Chick-fil-A starts to obstruct your view as you go by. You do get a small glimpse of it there. It's just not much through the trees and the out parcel buildings. So it was kind of the impression I got as I walked up the sidewalk there. Get a little glimpse of the big sign there. This is getting up closer to the corner, kind of what you see as you round the corner there, turning right onto Highway 9 going north. Just barely see the roof line there, but really not much else. I think I can see the main sign there on the left. This is walking along Highway 9. These are really the best views I could see of Walmart. Was walking up Highway 9 there, just north of Windward. That's the first entrance there, and then I had to turn in there because I was getting hot and running late. So that's as far as I went with it. I think that's back to the beginning.
Thank you, Scott.
So I guess those pictures show that it doesn't matter what the size is, you still can't see them.
The closest pictures, just for clarification, Scott, where you could actually see the sign is when you were walking about 4 slides back.
That one?
Maybe a couple more back.
That one.
Yes.
That's right at the corner.
Okay. Not something you would see going 20, 30 miles an hour.
Well, you might get a glimpse of it, but you're certainly, I think the only thing your eye's going to fall on is the larger sign. I can't imagine. And I think that the applicant has already alluded to the fact that the other signs, the purpose is wayfinding. It's not for identification
Correct.
from the streets.
Okay.
I think this bears that out. You certainly couldn't see those other signs from here.
Thank you. At this time, before we close public comment, I'd like to have the applicant, any further comments or any further comments from the board to the applicant?
Again, I think the pictures taken by Mr. Kilgore show that, again, what we're trying to achieve isn't about saying, hey, we're Walmart. It's about when the shopping public comes into the property, that they're able to, fix themselves. I need to go here, so I'll turn here and park, versus, circling the parking lot trying to figure out what's going on, and then getting to the store realizing I need to go to the pharmacy. It's now on the other side of the store. So, again, that's what we're trying to do. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any final questions for the applicant? Any final questions for the applicant? Anyone? No? Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion.
Can we get some discussion before?
We have to have a motion on the floor to discuss.
Okay. Well, I need a clarification. I'm stuck on calculations, guys. Again, I'm sorry. What is presented in this packet and what is summarized in the table doesn't match, and that's what I'm confused with. There's two things I'm confused with. Is this okay? To clarify this before we head on?
And we could second and then
That's fine.
discuss.
That's fine. We can do that. We just need a motion
Just
to have a
for
discussion.
Robert's rules,
That's fine. Thank you.
I move to defer.
I'll second.
Okay, now we can go into discussion.
Discussion.
Did you vote?
We'll have to either vote
Did you vote on it?
Yeah.
Oh,
No, we're in discussion.
All in favor?
We're
We're discussing of the motion.
Don't vote it, then
We
we
had to
can't
vote,
discuss.
though.
No, we don't have to vote.
Never mind.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
discussion of the
Okay.
motion that's on the
Okay,
floor.
never mind.
Deferment.
Sorry.
So I'm building off that. There's two things that confuse me. One is the allowed square foot in 2000 and was actually put in place are different, both at the total level, but even how they were applied within each of the signs. And this has implications if we were to deny outright. Okay, that's why I want a clarification on this. The allowed square foot in the 2000 variance was a total of 340, and it was broken up 189, basically 40, 30, and 80. Okay, you see that table on page 4?
Right.
But how it was actually put in place in practice, based on the existing square feet, is 190, 39, 47, and 45, for a total of 322. So they're actually, in total, had 18 square foot extra.
But they went over on a couple of the individuals.
But they kind of shifted things around, all right? So there's 18 square foot extra, and they kind of shifted things around. Where I'm confused is when I look at this part of the packet, which has their descriptions, the applicant stated that the signs, find your way signs were 2 foot high. If I look at that, 2 foot high, the market and pharmacy is depicted as being 24 foot long. 2 times 24 is 48 square feet. However, the applicant's asking for 65 square feet. And then if I go to the home and living and outdoor living, same thing. If they're 2 foot high by roughly 18 foot long, that's 36 square feet. The applicant is requesting 47 and 49 respectively. Yes, Walt?
I think, again, I'm going to have to ask Angela, but the way I remember how we did it with squares is that each word represented a separate square. In each symbol, and each, so...
Each letter represents a separate square. Is that
Well, no, each word. So, in other words, a group of words isn't necessarily, you don't just do the summation, I think. Now, and that's because they're individual letters. Now, I have seen some municipalities where they do it by individual letters. That if they're individual letters and they're not on a single screened sign, then they're done as individual letters. So, I'd have to ask Angela how they do those calculations.
May I clarify something real quick?
Let me go ahead and answer them. The ordinance actually states that you can do a polygon of up to 8 sides to do your measurements, but at the same time, you can either do that or you can put a box around each word. I think, I'm not sure which one they did, but if you take, for example, the market and pharmacy, if you actually take the height of the the biggest, the longest letter, which I think is that Y, and that's 2 feet, almost 10 inches, times the 24, that's like 72. So if you do it exactly, that'll get you closer to the 65.73. And same with the Walmart, if you actually do 8 times 29 feet, it actually comes out to 299.
Okay.
8 times 37, excuse me.
Okay, so you take the maximum height.
Mm-hmm.
The largest object times.
If you want a quick rough,
Yeah.
or you can break it down. You can put a box around the star. You can put a box around Walmart.
I'd also like to point
and the reason
out-
I brought this up because if there was a calculation error in this table, I wanted to make sure the board could consider that. It appears that there's not. However, again, the earlier point is if there's an outright denial here, that reverts back to the 340. And my question and clarification for staff is, would it be allocated according to sign 1, 2, 3, 4 as it was in 2000?
Which is in contrast to what is existing.
If you,
That's another thing that's
Right.
obfuscating this, because these signs are different from what was actually approved. If you look at the square
I don't
footages.
think the existing signs really come into play.
Well, I'd like staff to.
Or let me ask the legal, is that typically when you know, if there's a square footage total, that the applicant can then know this is my boundary, and then I can allocate accordingly?
There's no problem with doing it either way.
the
I saw the
variance.
prior variance. Let me take a look at that. Reading what purports to be the results of the 2000 Fulton County Board of Appeals appears to reference, Condition 2, 4 signs at the following dimensions, identifies the 4 specific lot or sign square footages that are listed in the existing, the allowed square foot per 2000 variance. To me, first looking at this, I would say the better reading of this is that they had an approval for a sign of 100, 4 signs of these specific requirements. That being said, they are not necessarily entitled to the particular 4 signs that they have. I think you would be justified in enforcing the 2000 size requirements for 4 signs. They would still have 4 signs, but an entitlement to 4 signs, but at the specific sizes listed in the 2000 variance. Now, that's subject to any other facts, approvals, permitting that may have taken place since the variance was granted.
Which would still be an overall increase from what's existing of about 17.5 feet,
Right.
square feet.
But if we denied this outright, they could go out and put up 4 signs of 190 or 189, 39.7, 30.45, and 80.85. They could go out and do that.
Yes,
Because they've already been given the variance for
that's
that.
what I see in front of me, yes.
And that's if we were to
Each of those
deny
signs.
both parts, even the increase from 2
Yes.
to 4, which can be confusing.
Yes.
Because it seems like we would be reducing them.
No, because
The
they've
denial-
already been given that, so they would continue.
But they're asking for an increase from 2 to 4, which we would deny, which, on the surface, it would seem like we would
Yeah.
reduce them back to 2.
Right.
I just want to clarify that.
That's because 2 to 4 is from the ordinance to what they're asking for, but they're not living under the ordinance right now.
Correct.
Correct.
So, just to clarify, Paul, are you saying that a denial would be 4 discrete signs at sign 1, 189 square feet, sign 2, 39.7, sign 3, 30.45, and sign 4, 80.85, for a total of 340? Or are you saying a denial would be 4 signs not to exceed 340 square feet?
As I read what's in front of me, I believe they were approved for 4 individual signs of specific sizes, a maximum of specific sizes for each of the 4 signs. It doesn't reference the total at all
Okay.
in the variance if that was previously approved in 2000.
Okay. other clarification. We have the latitude, based on what's before us, to approve what they've asked, to approve less than what has been asked for us,
That's correct.
as part of an approval. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Mr. Recook?
I've done some quick calculations. I mean, I'm showing the Walmart sign is actually smaller than what the table's indicating. That if I do the Walmart alone, it's 157.2 square feet. That's basically 5.5 times 28.5833, which, excuse me?
Counting the Spark.
Well, that's the word Walmart. And then if you add the Spark at 64 square feet, which is an 8 by 8 square, that totals it up to be 221.2. And then if I add that little segment between the Spark and the Walmart, that's another 8 feet. So at the most, it's 229.8. So, and they're actually asking for, I know it's hard to read. Yeah, it's 298 is what they're asking for. So, well, I'm reading this table. It says 298 on the plans. Yeah, 298 is on this table as well.
Angela, clarification, where did this table on page 4 of our packet come from? Was that internally calculated? from
Those
staff?
are the numbers that they provided in your packet, and yeah, those are the numbers that were provided in your packet on that second page of the with the details. And again, I just wanted to say, I guess the ordinance allows you to do a polygon of up to 8 sides. My geometry isn't that good, so what I typically do is just take the biggest dimensions, and like an example, for the Walmart and the Spark, with the 8 feet by the 37, the 8 feet is for the Spark, that's 299, so that's pretty close to what they're saying. I think they may have broken it down with the Walmart and then figured the Spark. But the ordinance also states that if it's within a certain feet, 2 feet or something, it's considered one sign. So I would not consider, I wouldn't calculate those separately unless it was like, hairline close or something.
I think we should take a vote on our motion of deferment and then move on.
Madam Chair, move to deny.
Well, we have to vote on deferral.
On deferment.
We still have a motion.
That's what caused to allow us to have our discussion.
Move back into the proceedings.
Back, your second motion. So at this time, there's a motion on the floor for deferment. I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor of deferment, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Did you raise? Which way did you raise?
Deferment.
So you're saying you want it deferred? Is that?
That's the motion on the table.
Right. Do you want to defer or you to deny the deferment?
I want to deny the deferment.
Okay, all right. Let the record show that the motion failed unanimously. At
Right.
this time, the floor is open for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd move to deny variance request V09-10 based on the fact that the conditions submitted by the applicant do not meet the standard for consideration of existing foliage or structures bringing about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road.
I'll second. Discussion? Mr. Recook?
Can I go back to pictures on the screen here? The obvious reason for their request is because they do have a problem with foliage, and it has nothing to do with even the existing structures to some degree. The buildings also do create some impediment. The reason I would kind of vote in the contrary is because I would make a motion to do something to protect the trees that isn't present now, and we're only looking at increasing it very slightly, and I'm not sure it's going to make a big difference in your ability to see the signs one way or the other, but it's going to protect the trees, which in my view is probably the most important thing to protect. And I don't think there's any mechanism that we have presently that really would protect the trees or the foliage. And I'm not seeing how this is going to be a detriment to the community by having these additional letters, because I'm not sure you'll be able to tell that there's a difference in the amount of square footage of signs from these public streets. But if we did protect the trees, and I think that's, you may have heard me mention what I mentioned to the applicant about protecting the trees and doing it, we may do more of a service to improving the overall environment than this slight request for more signage. I also feel very bad when we have a big box. They are somewhat discriminated where they don't have the ability to have as many signs as Chick-fil-A and all these out parcels. If you summed up all these out parcels, they have a lot more signage than this big box. Now, I realize a lot of the signage for Walmart, people just have to know where it is. But the majority of the signage that I see that they're putting on this building is more for directional once you get inside their parking lot. And I don't think we're making necessarily their sign that much bigger, but I think it's something where I think overall it would help once you get there to know where you're going.
I would agree that some of the increase in signage would help once inside the parking lot, but our standard for consideration is based on reading these signs from an adjoining public road. And as you established early on, these aren't public roads that potential customers will be driving on once they've turned in. And also, I think another mitigating factor is the monument sign, which is on the road, which would, provide passersby, drivers, the knowledge of exactly what's in that shopping center, absent a good view from a public road of this new signage package.
I concur with you, Mr. Recook, that the purpose of these signs are directional signs, and the issue of being able to see the signs from the public roads, whether they be State Route Highway 9 or Wynwood Parkway, and due to the out parcels, that those situations will not be alleviated by approval of these. The applicant stated that this is part of a rebranding effort, and that's the driver and the reasoning for them coming forward. And those actions would still be able to move forward. And the objective of these signs of being directional way signs to help their customers be able to distinguish and identify more efficiently, which area of the store and which side to enter. Those objectives would still be able to be met. Therefore, I do not feel that there has been adequate justification to prove that there is a hardship to warrant the approval of the variance.
And I would agree with the original granting of the variance, because I think that the ordinance as stated, 200 square feet and 2 signs, would be detrimental to passersby on public roads being able to see the signage. So let's remember that we are reverting back to an already generous standard of, is it 340 total square feet and 4 signs, not the 2 and 200 square feet.
And just one last comment then, Mr. Kilgore. I do appreciate, and you do bring up a point, Mr. Recook, about the fact of, they are a large entity, versus the smaller entities. But, we have addressed this issue previously that has come before the board with another large retailer in Target. And, as a neighbor of the city of Milton, they have been able to move forward with their signage and their branding issues, in accordance with, with our ordinance. Mr. Kilgore, and then I think staff actually had a comment that they felt pertinent to our discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge your effort. I definitely appreciate the protecting of the trees, and I hate seeing trees get cut down. It breaks my heart whenever I see them being clear-cutted for another big box. And so I definitely appreciate that, but I worry more about granting a sign variance that we really can't justify and risking the sign ordinance. I worry a lot more about large signs going up in Milton and being challenged legally, having our sign ordinance challenged legally, and I don't think this is the right mechanism for protecting trees. I definitely see what you're trying to do, and I appreciate that, and I agree with the attempt and the sentiment, but I disagree with the mechanism that we're trying to use here. I just think it puts our ordinance at risk.
I have a comment. I'm referring back to the applicant's letter of appeal, and I think if he didn't say it in the meeting, it was stated in the letter that the signage on the store is difficult to view, the location or something of the building, along with the slight grade into the parking area and excessive vegetation, make it difficult to view the signage from the adjoining public road. Due to these factors, we request relief be granted to the sign ordinance. If he didn't say it, it's here on the record, and I think we need to take note of that.
Yeah, let me respond to that, because I want to make it clear, at least what my feelings are in terms of the hardship. I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, the pictures show you can't see the signage, but I think implied in the whole variance process is that the variance is going to mitigate or alleviate the hardship that is present. And I just don't see, number one, how granting this variance would alleviate this hardship in the least. And number two, I think it's already been stated pretty clearly that the purpose of the signs that are really in question are wayfinding, and wayfinding doesn't occur at the street. So I just don't see, yeah, we've got a building that's obstructed by foliage and outlying buildings, but I don't believe the burden of proof has been made that this variance will help in that regard. So
I
that's why
think our
I don't
ordinance gives them the right to request that. That's
Sure.
their opinion,
But
and legally.
Yep. They can request anything they want, but we also have the latitude to grant or deny based on the facts that are before us.
But the facts are we can't see it.
We're not bound to grant the request just because the hardship exists.
But
in my opinion.
if you do what you just said you can't see it because of the foliage.
Right.
He just met the requirement.
He met the requirement for a hardship.
That's correct.
But he hasn't shown me that the variance that he's requesting is going to alleviate that hardship. So how is that allowing for a variance to be granted?
Well, trees
I
only
just don't- I just
do
can't go
two
there.
things. They grow up and they grow out.
Sure.
So it's only going to get worse.
Sure.
And the trees on the inside in the islands are only going to go up and grow out. And that's going to make the foliage even tougher to see through.
Right.
So
How is the
he's-
granting of this variance going to make any difference in that situation whatsoever?
I think it'll make
just
it a
don't
whole
see
lot easier for people to figure out where they're supposed to go once they go into Walmart.
And we all have to decide on that.
And one other problem I have, and again, you say, well, it doesn't matter, but in my view, it's the most important thing. So he goes out there and says, okay, I'm going to just trim all these trees. And there's nothing that stops me from trimming these trees, and I'm going to make sure that everybody can see it a lot better. So then when he trims it, are we making our community any better by doing it? Now you say, well, we're worried about how the ordinance is interpreted and how important it is to hold the standard. But the real issue to me is I want to have the community look nice, and I want to have it look nice not just today, but in 20 and 30 years from now. And to me, the important thing is no one's going to see the signs necessarily as time goes on, but they will see the trees. And I sure would ask any of you to go to Snellville and go look at Marketplace, and to the end of Ronald Reagan and 316, or Ronald Reagan and 324, and go look on your left and see what that developer did to those beautiful trees that were there. And they created wonderful tree-lined views of no trees or trees severely trimmed, and that's what happens. If any of you go to Paris, they do that every year on the Champs-Élysées, and they prune their trees, and it looks very pretty. But in this case, it was not the way it was pruned. It was pruned to basically increase the sight line. So I guess what I'm saying is I see a little bit of an increase in the signs, but I see ultimately a much deeper and improved way of keeping our hands on their ability to trim and make sure that we're not obscuring the views of these signs, and we're improving the views of these signs by adding some additional language.
also want to point out that part of the increase on the signage, on the smaller signs over the vestibules and over the, is because there's more letters. I mean, you can't do this much square footage without changing the font size in what's existing. So I think we need to be aware of, there's more letters and it's going to be more square footage. And on the Walmart sign, it's 6 inches taller, but we've got the Spark, and that's their branding. And, I don't know about you, but if I had a branding, I would want to put it on every single one of my buildings.
Staff had a comment that they wanted to make that they thought would be pertinent to the board's discussion.
I just wanted to address the comments about the trees. If for some reason they were trimmed down to nubs or removed or whatever, staff basically holds the developer to the tree requirements that were approved with the LDP, so we would make them replace them.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment to make about denial, and this is, I think, the quandary that I was trying to allude to earlier. If we were to deny, we would be reverting back to a 2000 variance for essentially a different product, of which it's very clear, sign 1, 2, 3, and 4, how much they would get on square footage, which is not in balance for the product that they're looking at moving to today. So, for example, we would revert back to a 30 square foot sign and an 80 square foot sign for what they would be looking to use for the vestibules. And so we might end up with a product that is worse by reverting back. So it's a quandary, right? I agree with Mr. McCrae that if you read the letter of the sign ordinance, by making the signs bigger doesn't necessarily mitigate the obstruction issue here. The obstruction is the obstruction. You can't move a building. And in the case of the trees are, as we heard from staff, the trees are there. And I also am sensitive to Mr. Kilgore's point about adhering to the variance, the sign ordinance. The sign ordinance as it relates to Milton's ability to uphold this ordinance going forward, and especially in a sensitive area like the Highway 9 corridor. So I'm not sure I'm adding any clarification, but I'm trying to weigh both sides here.
So are you saying that that basically making it go back and trying to basically prescribe them to try to fit into something that was approved, several years ago, and now they're under a different branding scheme, and
They're using the signage very differently today.
right, and so a denial would automatically revert to that, versus if with an approval, then we could provide some criteria and consider some conditions on from the signage standpoint.
Whether they be, in Walt's case, trying to protect the tree conditions, maybe one of the things I was alluding to is we could potentially approve with as stringent of requirements overall as there was in 2000, but make them more proportionate to allow this product to be more proportionate. So, as an example, we could, keep the overall Walmart Spark, at 190, and we could reduce the market, home and living, and outdoor to something that is less than 2 foot in height, to something that's more like 1.5 foot in height. That would get us to an overall product that's at or about 340 square feet.
So you're saying that we may be able to seek a better, more of a win-win type of scenario to accommodate both?
But I would need some direction from the city attorney as it relates to, upholding this ordinance. I mean, they clearly do, in my opinion, have a foliage issue with foliage and structures. What's uncertain to me is, by making the sign bigger, if the whole front of the building in certain cases was a Walmart sign, you might not even see it from the street.
The variance condition or the consideration that you need to meet, I think, says there has to be existing foliage and structures bring about a hardship. The fact that, and it doesn't say that the variance in this particular consideration has to improve it, fix it, make it perfect. There are other considerations that say it's in the public interest and safety, but if you increase the size of the sign a little bit, it may not completely alleviate the problem, but in theory it will improve. Unless that sign is completely not visible from the road, you will be improving its visibility from the road to even the smallest extent.
And just to clarify, and just to reiterate, just to make sure, I think I asked this question earlier, we have the latitude with an approval to condition it. The client has asked for X. We have a latitude of we can go below X. We can, even if we wanted to, go above X.
You cannot approve more than the requested square
Okay,
footage.
But in approval, we have the latitude then to provide, to give them less than they requested, but to
Yeah.
give them the approval of the 4 signs, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to ask you, though, and maybe I shouldn't even say this in public, but if they were before us requesting a billboard on top of their building, I mean, maybe a double-sized billboard, you're saying we would basically have to grant that because they've shown hardship? I think we've got latitude on whether we can grant it or not based on whether we think it improves the situation enough to warrant what they're asking.
These are considerations and not requirements. They're things for the board to consider.
Okay. Just because they've met the considerations doesn't mean that we're bound to grant the variance.
Right. And there are other considerations that need to be met as well.
They have to meet it in order for us to consider it. And they've met it. But we can still consider it and say, I don't agree with it. I don't want to get into this, we're bound to grant it because they've met a consideration. We're bound to not grant it if they haven't met the consideration. Because we can't even consider it. But just because they've met it doesn't mean they're in. I mean, that's why.
I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Chernick's point. I understand what you're saying. The only thing that, and you know this, that I get wary of is trying to do designs from our point of view. And I think that it's an admirable trait to try and find consensus, but in this case, with all these variables at play, a signage package that was approved and then modified in reality to what's existing now, compounded by a new proposal on the table. If we try and sync our intent with what they're requesting and a de facto redesign, then I think we might do ourselves more harm than good. Just wanted to put that on the table.
And I agree with that, but I also agree with Todd in the fact that if we deny this and it goes back to the 340 square feet, none of this is going to work at all for them. And they've met their variance. I mean, they've come and they've shown us why they've met what they want. We've all sat here and agreed and said there's foliage, you can't see it, you can't. And you can say these aren't public roads, but you can still get a ticket, so they're public roads. Only on private property do you not get tickets from police. So just because they're not named, I still consider those public roads. You can't see a lot of that Walmart building until you get right up to the Walmart building. So I think they've met their variance.
How do you feel, though, about forcing an allocation that is more proportionate, but still binds them to what they had in 2000?
Whereas if we went to 340, but even these 3 out, let them have
And let me-
large, but even these out so they can have those 3 signs that are about the same size.
I don't think you can even those out to where they'll even be able to be read.
Well,
And
wait,
the
let me give, I did some rough calculations, and I appreciate your point, Mr. McCray, about design, but just rough calculations, instead of having a 2-foot overall sign on these doorways, if you reduce it to 1.5 feet, you make up some headway there, and instead of giving them the full 100 square foot on the Walmart Spark, you could pretty quickly get them into that 340 range, but also achieve the proportion. So you have the same amount of square footage essentially as in place today, but allocated more proportionately. So,
to match the design that they're trying
Right.
to achieve.
And I agree with John had to say, I think we'll be here 6 hours trying to decide whether it ought to be a foot and a half, a foot and 3/4, or whether it ought to be 18 feet wide, 17 and a half. And I don't think that's going to make that much of a difference on whether we knock it down from 2 feet to a foot and a half. I don't think that's why we're here as a board, is to design what they want to do.
I have a comment too. I think we're keep talking about the 340 allocation, but what I heard him say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is each sign has its limits of square footage. It wasn't a total cumulative square footage. The variance was specific, and what you're going to do is you're going to have inconsistent font sizes because of the amount of lettering. And I don't think that's what we want on Walmart.
I doubt Walmart would do that in practice, but essentially that would be an option for them.
That would be an option.
Well, and they could always request another variance with a new redesign.
Or they could do what they actually did in practice, which is move the numbers around among signs,
Right.
which is what happened. Because
And meet
as
this-
example,
That would
sign
violate
number
the variance.
well, sign number 3 was approved at 30
It would
foot, and they
violate
actually put in 47.
And it would still violate the variance, and I'm sure Milton would not appreciate that.
Let me make one other comment, kind of in support of the direction that I feel like you're trying to take it, Mr. Черник, and that is, as I said earlier, one of my bigger concerns is every time we mess around with the Milton sign ordinance, we chip away at its foundation, and we're making it a little bit easier for a billboard company to come in here and say, we want to put up billboards, and you guys' policy, obviously you don't enforce your sign ordinance, so we ought to get what we want. If a judge agrees with him, our sign ordinance is toast, and that's what happened up in Forsyth County. We don't want that to happen in Milton. So I do like what you're going for, which is to say we're not going to expand what they already have, at least in terms of total square footage. And that way, we're giving them the latitude that they need to be a viable commercial enterprise in Milton, to get the signage that they need, but we're not giving them a little bit more just because we want to as a board. And that's what concerns me, is every time we give somebody a little bit more just because we want to, we are risking that as a community. So I don't want to do that.
But each case is independent within itself.
But a judge doesn't care about that. A judge looks at the policy of Milton, and the policy of Milton is the sum body of the decisions this board makes. You're right, from what we do, it's individual, but from a lawsuit, when somebody comes and says they want to put a billboard up on 400 inside the city limits of Milton, the judge looks at the policy of Milton. How does Milton enforce its ordinance?
And the judge can make a decision to put up a billboard even if we stuck strictly to the policy. The judge can do whatever he wants. So
Correct.
That doesn't wash out.
I agree, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Order on this one?
Yeah, I'd like to take a vote. There's a motion before us for denial of V09-10. All those in favor of denial, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Let the record show that the motion failed by a vote of 6-1. The floor is now open for another motion.
I'd like to take a stab at a motion I think will be fairly clean for discussion purposes. I'd like to make a motion to approve, given this applicant has shown hardship with existing foliage and structures and its impairment to the ability to see these existing signs from a public road. Approval with condition that the overall square footage shall not exceed 340 square feet. Sign number 1 shall be limited to 298 square feet. The remainder, which would be 42 square feet, to be allocated amongst signs 2, 3, and 4.
42 square
42
feet.
square feet.
42 square feet. No, I'm giving them up to 298 if they want to put it on the Walmart sign, with the additional 42 to be allocated across signs 2, 3, and 4 for a total of 340.
For clarity, if they do not go up to 298, would they be able to apply the additional to those three
That
signs?
would be the intent of how I'm proposing this, yes.
So would we then be better, well, let me do this. Let me second for discussion. Okay, let me second for discussion. Question of clarification, and city attorney could help me in this. It has been stated that each individual sign has been given a dimension, but the question arose that if, for example, sign number 1 of the 298 square feet was not utilized, that could then be appropriated and utilized within the other 3 signs. That even though in the motion it was sign 1, dimension A, sign 2, dimension B, sign C, sign 3, dimension C, sign 4, dimension D, there is an overall, and that the client, that the applicant has the latitude to appropriate that total maximum square footage amongst those 4 signs. Does that make sense?
Amongst essentially, yes, they have the latitude to allocate amongst the 4 signs. However, sign number 1 has a maximum of 298.
Gotcha.
That
Okay, so you've given
sounds
them a
like, as I
boundary.
understood, and probably the clearest statement of it.
Okay, perfect. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to
That word maximum that's what I was listening out for, because if you bind them to 298, I think that's going to be very disproportionate on the
Well, that's what they're
front of that
asking
building.
for.
So
That's
So a
what they're
maximum
asking
of
for.
it, and therefore, if they wanted these signs over the vestibules to, achieve their,
right,
that short
I think that's a reasonable attitude to give them. I wouldn't want to go any further into defining the characteristics and sizes of the signage, though. That's my take.
Mr. Recook?
Can anyone tell me what that exit sign lettering is out there by the door? Would you like to make a guess?
12 or 16.
It's probably about 8 inches, 8 to 12 inches. Just to give you an understanding of what they're asking for, the length of their words, these 3 separate words, outdoor living, home and living, and market and pharmacy, is 69 feet long. Now, of course, the length is directly related to the font and the height of the letter, but you're basically saying if they did keep the same, let's say, length, you're looking at 7 inches per the height of the overall sign. Again, I just don't, I don't see the issue of approving a little bit extra square footage for a sign. I mean, it's not like a lot of that is really going to make a difference in your perception of how big that sign is or is not from the street. 108 square feet, once again, as I mentioned, they're making the height of the sign 6 inches higher for Walmart versus 5 inches, and they're adding the spark. And that's your big difference that's occurring. And again, I guess outdoor living, they just, for whatever reason, I don't quite understand why that one's so much longer than market and pharmacy, but I guess it is, or close to it. But again, I'd rather just approve what they're requesting.
I have a question for staff. Is that possible?
Sure.
Angela, the height of the existing signs that they have now, we're at 2 feet for tire and lube and 2 feet for market and pharmacy. What's the difference in the height that they're proposing? I know we've got overall square footage difference.
Let's see, these are their numbers. Existing tire and lube,
Is that 2.5? It's, or 2.6?
2 feet 6 inches.
And what they're proposing is 2?
Well, see, they don't have a tire and lube on the new signage. It's going to be replaced with,
But they've actually gone down in height?
well, they don't, the signage in that area, let's put it that way, will be outdoor living, and that's going to be 2 feet. So it'll be,
So they're actually going down in height.
yes.
Did you all hear that?
Say it again.
Thank you. Their existing signage was what, Angela?
The Tire and Lube Express signage is 2 feet 6 inches high, and it's going to be replaced with outdoor living, which is 2 feet high.
So we're going down 6 inches in height on the lettering. The increase is the wording.
Sure, because the words are longer.
So
Yeah.
And Express is also,
what the conflict is
Well,
with our
and
signage.
the other thing that we have said in this board, and I've heard you say it 1,000 times, most of it's always been at Walt, but we're not here to redesign. We're here to either approve or deny what they brought to us. We're not here to look at what they brought and say, okay, let's change all this. And I agree with Marcia. They're looking for less. It's just longer because they're putting words up.
Right, and they're shrinking.
They're shrinking them down. It's just longer because of the words. Because you can't
And the
put,
spark.
yeah, you can't put 2 big words up there in that much space. But they're not really asking for a huge increase here. It's just that the words are longer.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I also know that the words that we're discussing, all the words we're discussing now are words that cannot be seen from the street. And the reason we grant a variance for a sign is for better visibility from the street. You can't see these signs from the street. So why are we granting this variance? Why, I mean, other than I like the fact that we've given them up to 298, which is what they need for the sign that you can see from the street, because that's what they're asking for. We're able to give that to them,
Because
but we're not going beyond what we've already given them. So
Even in your picture, Scott, even when you stood up there, you can't hardly see any of it. So even when you're inside the Walmart thing with all the trees, it becomes almost impossible. So I mean, they've met what they're supposed to meet for the city of Milton.
Right.
They've got.
no, they've met what they have to meet for us to consider a variance.
but it is, what again they're saying is the market and pharmacy, what they were having was 39 square feet. They're asking for 66 square feet. What they were asking for tire and lube, what the old sign was 30 square feet. The tire and lube is now going to be 47 feet. So it is slightly larger. Both of those are larger. And then the last one for the sign of 80.85, which is express, that's the one that, Super Target, I guess it is. They're taking off and they're putting some of that towards the outdoor living and towards their overall sign. But again, they are making their sign, the biggest majority of the extra square footage they're adding is purely to the Walmart sign, not really, and I understand exactly what you're saying. The most of the square footage they're adding is to the actual Walmart sign and to the Spark. So when you're really looking at the difference, that's where they're adding the majority of it, but they are moving the square footage around for the other 3 items.
Well, and the market and the pharmacy are 2 longer words than supercenter.
Right.
So it's longer this way.
Right.
It's not bigger this way.
It's not, there's one character difference.
Well, but they didn't spell it out. It'll be market and pharmacy. They just agreed
Okay,
this. It'll be the whole entire
Okay.
world. So it's
It would
about.
be
Oh, no,
It'd be
they
longer.
did spell it out. They spelled it
Sorry,
out on
no,
the
they
sign.
did.
But they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
care.
yeah, sorry.
So it's a huge difference.
And I think we also need to look at staff's comments, which were, and recommendations, which were,
Well, what do you expect to hear from stormwater and building plan review?
well, I do expect to hear something from staff if there's an issue.
Yeah, another option, as we're in discussion, to be mindful of is, I hear the board's concern about design, and it's a very fair point, is we have an option potentially to defer. The applicant has heard our concerns and could bring back a different product, hearing our concerns, of which we would not be in the position of designing. We would be in the position of approving or denying.
And they could go back and try to live within the 340, and if they can come back and demonstrate for us that 340 is going to make these signs, these little skinny things that you can't read, then they've got a case for possibly asking for more than that. But I think if they can live within 340, then we have not given them any more than they have, and that would make me a lot more comfortable with my concern of messing around with the sign.
But I think we've already proven that if we go 298 for the Walmart and the Spark, and you've got to have that, that's huge. There is no way they can do the rest of that and stay under 340. You cannot do it. I mean, so they're going to be able to come back and say, I can't do 42 square feet for 3 different signs.
So let's see what they come back with then.
Well, understand that the existing Walmart sign, which has the star in between the wall and the mark, is currently 190. So if you just kept it at that 190, what would that Walmart with the Spark look like, is the question. Because there's 100 square feet difference right there.
Let them play with it, let them do the design.
So let them play with it, and if it looks disproportionate and, whatever, then you can make that, decision yourself.
And I've got one more number that I just crunched, and that is going from 340, which is what they're allowed now, to 460, which is what they're asking for, just in terms of square footage, total square footage. That's a 35% increase that they're asking, to go from the 2,000 variance, which gave them 340, to 460. So if we just approve it, we've given them a 35% increase in their total square footage. That's significant. That's all I'm saying. Whether that's
And more than double
ridiculous or
double the sign allowance per the city.
right.
Yeah.
If you start comparing it to the sign ordinance, you're right. The
But
numbers
it's
are a lot
because of the words they want to use. It's not because they want huge signs. They want to put up market and pharmacy because that's what they put up at all their stores.
Understood. And just to get back to basics, my primary concern is that they haven't met the criteria that they're asking for a variance to meet,
Well, they have.
in my opinion.
But also, they could also put a
This
sign,
increase is going to somehow further mitigate the vegetation, screening their signage from a public road. I'm not sure that it does,
well,
in
again,
excess of what they've already been approved for.
they could put 2 signs on the side of their building as well, and they're not asking for that. So in other words, they're taking that square footage that they could have put on the side and putting it up here towards the front. And in addition, the only square footage they're really increasing on all the sign diagram for the majority of it, the 108 square feet, is to the Walmart sign itself. It's not for these other signs particularly. And those are really going towards the true word Walmart so they can be seen better from the street. So that's the predominant. I mean, yes, there is 3.71 that's going towards these other 3 signs, but the majority is to make it a little bit bigger. And
I think that's a good point, and that's maybe something that could be addressed with what Mr. Chernick's proposing with the deferral. Not to say that I'm completely behind that. I don't want to get your feelings, but something to consider.
Is there a motion on the table?
There is a motion on the table for approval
With condition.
with conditions.
Basically, overall square footage of 340, sign number 1 having a maximum of 298, the remaining square footage to be allocated amongst signs 2, 3, and 4. That was, in essence, the original.
Right. Are we ready to vote?
Yeah, and with the clarification that if they so desired not to utilize the complete 298, that square footage would then be able to be reallocated to the other 3 signs. So, yeah, if there's a motion on the table, we have a second. Take a vote. All those in favor of approval of B09-10, 5200 Windward Parkway, for the requested variance to increase the maximum number of wall signs from 2 to 4, and to increase the maximum allowed square footage of signage from 200 square feet to 340 square feet, such that sign number 1 would not exceed 298 square feet. Sign number 2,
2, 3, and 4 would
2,
have a
3, and
balance.
4 would make up the balance of the 340 square feet. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Let the record show that the motion fails by a vote of 4 to 3. The floor is open for a motion. I'd like to take a motion. Take the motion. I'm sorry. Are you going to make a motion?
No, it was not.
Okay, go ahead.
whatever you want to do.
Okay, I'd like to make, we can vote on it, and then we can move forward depending on that. I'd like to make a motion to defer V09-010 to allow the applicant to reevaluate their sign requirements to see if they can, considering they're currently under a variance of 340 square feet, to see how they can allocate that.
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, understand what we're trying to do. The one question I would have, and I'm not sure how we can open the floor back up to the applicant, but procedurally, but I just want to make sure that we're not going to create some adverse situation where they're trying to meet a project goal, as the architect, if they have some time frame that they're trying to accomplish this by.
Understand.
Just one thing to consider, because, in construction, time is money.
Any other discussion? Let's take a vote. All those in favor to defer, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Let the record show that the motion fails by a vote of 4 to 3. The floor is open for a motion. Mr. Recook?
I'd like to make a motion for approval of the variance as requested, based on the plan being presented to us as well as the table, with the condition that on this property, no trees will be removed or trimmed unless pruning is done for health issues involving the tree. 2, if a tree dies or is damaged, a new 2-inch tree of similar species shall be planted within 90 days or on the city's request. 3, all trees and shrubs on the site shall be fertilized at a rate each winter by a registered arborist.
Second for discussion.
Can I get a clarification of your condition you mentioned being based on plans and tables? Did you intend to identify specific dimensions in the plan submitted? And that's so there's no maximum size. It's just only what has been submitted.
I'm sorry, yes, sir. Basically, based on the application made by the applicant, V09-10, basically increasing the square footage from 200 square feet to 460.28, and to allow from 2 signs to 4 signs. And again, it's based on a table that is submitted with the appropriate site plan.
And so I just want to be clear, you want each sign to have a specific dimension and size. It's not a total square footage can be applied however they want.
Okay. Again, I'm basically basing it on the plan they submitted, so it will be based on the square footage based on that plan.
Well, Mr. Recook, it's dated 6/17/09.
Per plan, and the plan shows the square footage for each of the signs.
It's got a date on the plan.
It's dated 6/17/09, if you're talking about the half scales.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
But it's been revised on
6/17/09.
6/17/09.
Holy cow.
So what you're saying is it's 6/17/09?
Well, it's really the proper way to say it is basically saying the original date he just mentioned plus revised date. So,
Discussion? None heard.
Well, actually, I would also appreciate if we would state that in this motion that the hardship.
I understand. The hardship that I see is, again, basically the ability to see the Walmart sign, and that's the majority of the square footage that's being added per this request is for that sign. And again, it's because the hardship not being able to see it through the trees. But at the same time, I think what we're also going to be doing is protecting the trees to make sure they're not damaged and impaired. So that's the reason for that. And I think it's within the intent and within harmony of the community based on the amount of other signs and markings on the buildings.
Let's take a vote. All those in favor of approval of V09-10 for the requested variance, please raise your hand. All those opposed? I need hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. What?
I approve.
You approved. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let the motion, let the record reflect that the motion failed by a vote of 4 to 3.
like to make a motion to approve whatever it is, 409-10,
Strike that.
to allow signage as proposed on the June 19th, was that it, John?
17.
June 17th, 09 plan submitted to the city of Milton with the hardship of visibility to be seen due to vegetation and trees.
Second for discussion.
I would just like to say that if we're granting them anything based on the hardship that's been stated, I think we should only address the large sign, because the large sign is the only thing you can see from the street. Why are we granting that? Now, I've heard a reason, but I want to hear a reason for why we're granting the number of signs to be greater than 2, and why we're granting the smaller signs to be greater than allowed by the sign ordinance. Why are we doing that? We've got to have that on the record. If you can give a good reason for that, I'll vote with your motion. But I haven't been convinced of that yet.
Go out.
Sure. Thank you. Again, the original variance was that they were granted 4 signs, and we're not necessarily changing it. And from what I have heard, we don't have the rights to change it from 4 signs back down to 2 signs. So that's the first thing. The second thing, that the other 3 signs besides Walmart are basically staying within the same square footage, but they're being distributed amongst themselves to be about the same, except for a 3-foot difference. That's the only thing that's occurring with that, with those dimensions. So the majority of the sign itself, the sign changes, is basically the 108 square feet being added to the physical word Walmart plus the Spark. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure the 298 is actually the correct number. My calculation came down to really be more like 230 versus the 298. But that's where I'm seeing that 3.71 was really the only additional amount of square footage added for those other 3 words or phrases, I should say. So, but the majority of it is going to the Walmart and the Spark, which is the basic thing that we're talking about, which is visibility for seeing that sign.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, the discussion I would raise again is in favor of a deferral option, which would give the applicant an opportunity to bring us a product hearing our concerns. That would be more in line with our ordinance.
But we already voted on that and it got denied.
Well, I still can bring it up in discussion here as
Correct.
it pertains to your vote.
Right. And a clarification, because I made that motion, in that deferment, I gave some guidance criteria, and maybe it would behoove and be in the best interest to try to seek some sort of remedy if we did go down the path of deferment. Not to, not to necessarily maybe, give a square footage, but realizing what the ordinance is, have the applicant come back. Okay, we have a motion to approve
According to the plan submitted.
according to the plan submitted of June 17th. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Let the record show that the motion failed by a vote of 4-3. I'd like to make a motion.
Can we do a deferral after we vote on what they've applicant has asked for? We can?
You can make as many motions as you want. You could make the same motion 12
Yeah.
times if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want
I think John
clarification.
had a good question. I think at this stage, we probably ought to ask the applicant to come back up and ask him a couple questions.
Why don't we make the motion? and
Well, a
that's
couple
part of
questions
that.
or a specific
Just
question.
a specific question. I think we just need
Does staff know the answer, potentially?
What is the question?
Yeah.
My concern is this going to cause a project delay that would,
Let's do this, let's do it procedurally, because
Okay.
it is going out of procedure to open the public discussion back up. If someone could, if you could make a
Second.
motion.
Oh, I thought you'd already.
No, we didn't have a motion.
move it to deny it?
Let me,
To open public comment.
Madam Chair, can you give me 1 second?
Yes. She may have it. Oh, that way, cleaner.
That's cleaner.
Gotcha. Just trying to figure out, wait a minute, did it fail?
Okay, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry, the applicant has stated that he would be willing to take the signage back and try to rework the package.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, there's no motion right now, okay. I'd like to make a motion to defer V09-10 to allow the applicant to go back and revisit their requested variance for the 4 signs.
Second.
Discussion? None heard, I'll take a vote. All those in favor of deferment of V09-10, please
Before
raise
you
your
vote, can you indicate to what time?
Our next meeting, our next September meeting, September 09 BZA meeting. No discussion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Let the record show that the motion passed by a vote of 5-2. So staff, if you could please put this item back on our agenda for our September meeting. Thank you.
Angela, can we ask for something? that they would come back with
Please, it's too
specifically?
late, I can't keep up with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we ask for something specific that they would come back with? Personally, I need a better visual on
Okay.
what existing signs would be with those requirements of the existing square footage.
Something that's more
Okay,
local.
so something like this for the existing signage.
With the new lettering.
maybe like an overlay?
I need to know if we limit it to that square footage that the variance gave them with the new lettering, what it would look like. That make sense?
In other words, if they lived within the 340, what would it look like?
Correct.
So you want to see basically 2 proposals?
Yes.
As some of the arguments were made, because of the length of the signs, these two signs that are over the vestibules, I mean, we could get closer to the 340. I'm not saying we can get to 340. Would that be, like if we're talking 50, 60, maybe 80 square feet difference?
Personally, I'd like to see what it would look like at 340, because my goal would be to limit you to no more than what you've already been given,
Right.
just a reallocation. I think that would be, personally, that would be the safest thing for the city. So if you could show us that, and if we look at it and it looks ridiculous, then we've got something to make a decision on at that point. So I think that would help. I think that's what
I need a better
Marcia's
visual
asking for.
from your sign.
Something that helps
And-
us
and
kind
then
of
go ahead and
visually
do a proposal.
put in perspective existing this
So,
and
like,
maybe where we,
I could have a picture of what we have now, the new proposal, and say an existing.
Right.
Correct.
Here's what it would look like if we lived within 340. Here's what it would look like if we got what we wanted. No questions asked.
Okay.
And
remember there's a lot of us who have eyes issues.
Gotcha.
And
Large fonts will help.
and remember,
Thank you.
and remember how Angela told you to measure.
Yes.
You can measure 8 polygons, or you can do squares. Either way.
Yeah, staff, if you could please work with the applicant so that we're all on the same page on the dimensions.
Yeah, we'll make sure we're all on the same page about how the measurements were done.
Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item is other business. And an executive session if required.
I don't have any need for an executive session this evening.
I do not have a need that would require to us to convene to executive session. Then, next item, we will adjourn. I'd like to make a,
Can I make one comment real quick?
Can we make a motion to adjourn?
Sure. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me.
I have
Go ahead.
one thing I need to say to Angela. I don't know if I need to say it on the record or not.
is it on the record or is this, are we
We-
adjourning?
Go ahead and adjourn.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for August 18th, 2009.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Let the record show that the motion passed unanimously. We are now adjourned.